Hey guys, this is Drakkalan bringing you another Calibria Crystal Guardians video. I'm doing this in a PowerPoint format this time just to try to give better presentation. So this video is going to be about the damage over time heroes of the dots. Right here if you look, dot stands for damage over time. There are a total of 3 damage over time effects in the game at the moment. We've got bleed, burn, and poison. I've included a screenshot of each one of their icons just so you can see what they look like. Under the help menu of Calibria, it kind of breaks down what each status effect does, so we'll go through that real quick. Each enemy can only have 10 buffs or negative status effects at a time. That includes your heroes, as well as any dungeon bosses you may be fighting. The negative status effects we're talking about this time, poison, burn, bleed. All 3 of them have the same effect on the boss, so it doesn't matter which hero you're running, the damage output's going to be the same, so it's more personal preference or what you roll as far as heroes. So we've got poison, burn, bleed. They take 5% of max HP and damage and ignore defense each turn. What that means, it doesn't mean your hero's turn, it means every time the boss takes a turn, when those status effects are on him, they will hit him and deal that 5% max HP and damage. Notable heroes for dots, it's going to be under the Nat 5s, we have Medusa, we have PoPo, we've got Abyss Lord, Arcanist, and Dow Lord. For the Nat 4s, we've got Flame Spirit, Wisp, Yaksha, and Hattori. And for the Nat 3s, we have Hydra, Mummy, Ripper, and Harpy. Where do you want to use the dot heroes? In any catacomb dungeon, preferably Colossus, Leviathan. You can also use them in Magic, Evil, Chaotic, Lawful, Light, and Dark to farm up your evolution materials. You do not want to use them for scenario farming. Instead, you could just use Angel of Death, which is given to you, or any other hero that can run through the bosses, or I say bosses, run through the stages faster. Dots, you're obviously having to wait for the enemy to take a turn, which is going to slow down your run times, so it is not recommended to use dot heroes, unless they're just dealing that much damage on their base skill damage. And do not use them in layers, right? This is like the in-game raids. Those bosses are immune to dots, and they do not use, or they negate 95% of HP-based skills. If you look at the screen, you can see where I've got my C10 run and my L10 runs up, just kind of giving you a display of what the dots look like. So, talking about Medusa, her leader skill is 41% hit to all allied heroes. Early game rune builds for her would be speed HP HP, speed HP hit, speed HP defense. Late game, you might want to start going away from speed and start doing attack crit rate, crit damage attack. The set that she's going to be best on is going to be Desperation in game, but early game you're going to want to build all these heroes on Agile or Blessing, that way they can survive long enough to kill the boss until you farm up runes with good enough substats. I definitely recommend for any of these heroes, including the Nat 3s, that you run the scenario stage that allows you to collect Agile runes and just run them on full Agile until you have good runes from farming C10, L10 to sub out. If we talk about the skills, we've got Poison Coating for skill 1. It's basically a 2-turn poison. We have Plague for skill 2. That's another 2-turn poison. And then Petrified Eye, which is a skill 3. And this is what makes her one of the best units to run for C10. This skill can petrify all enemies on wave 1, all enemies on wave 2, and the 2 towers on wave 3. So this gives you a great chance to run a speed team with her. Plus having that hit percent lead lowers the requirements of your substats, because you don't necessarily want to run hit percent as a primary stat, and you'd much rather have more damage or more survivability in the dungeon. So with that leadership skill, you're halfway to the max, or close to half. At the same time, that Petrified Eye, if you run around a Desperation build, it gives her a chance to petrify the eye, or if they resist that, the Desperation runes will give her a chance to stun the eyes. Next up we have PoPo. PoPo is great. He's got a defensive leadership skill. He can also be used as an early game farmer. Even though most of the time you don't want to run a dot, he does do AoE defense break, and he counterattacks, so he can counter clear waves. I think he's got about a 20 to 30 second wave clear time, if we're talking black pools. The skills I run mine on are Voodoo Staff. Quickly attack an enemy 3 times with an Exorcism Staff. Each attack deals 70% of attack and defense and damage. 35% chance to cause target to bleed for 1 turn. Now, 1 turn bleed isn't that much, but he counterattacks every time he gets attacked. And this kind of builds up, and if you have heroes that are hasting and giving energy, that 1 turn really adds up. You'll see people that land 3 to 7 bleeds at a time. You'll also see them put him on Berserk. I run mine on Berserk personally. That's what I prefer Berserk over Desperation or the other sets, just to give him more turns to use that skill 1. At the same time, you don't want to lose turns with Bamboo Grove and the others. when you're talking about the boss stage. Jade Zen basically lessens the amount of damage that he takes, and he always counterattacks when it's active, so that's another allowance for that skill 1 to go off and put bleed. Bamboo Grove is to help you get through the waves faster, and having a defense break on the boss isn't bad, but definitely not necessary when we're talking about terms of damage over time, but it's there for the wave 1, wave 2 clears. Abyss Lord, I've got him, I haven't built him yet. Definitely plan to, especially if I ever get a Yaksha. That way I can run him with the Yaksha. So we'll talk about some of the team synergy once we get down to those units. The Abyss Lord does a great job of, 1, living, and 2, putting a ton of burn effects on to the boss and other enemies. He's also got an AoE, so and his counterattacks, so running him on Desperation's fine, or you can just run him Berserk. Early game, again, Agile Blessing, and then running this guy as Speed HP or Speed HP defense is fine. He just needs to live and put his dots out. His leader skill is for Arena, so not useful for any of our PvE content. Arcanist, a lot of people are starting to see just how good Arcanist can be for both PvP and for PvE content. I haven't finished building mine yet, but definitely looking forward to her. I'm going to try to get her built on an attack, crit rate, crit damage attack build. Hopefully on Berserk or something, because I want to see how crazy her effects can get if she just keeps doing her multi-hit attacks. So if you look at her skill 1, got a chance to poison for 2 turns, which is great. It also reduces the enemy's attack, so attack break helps your team live longer. Skill 2, Arcane Blast. Attack enemies with Arcane Lightning 4 times at random. Add an additional bolt for each of the enemy's buffs, up to 4 times. Each bolt deals 80% of attack and damage and has an 80% chance to convert enemies' buffs to poison for 2 turns. And it targets enemies with buffs first, so it's definitely always going to go after the boss. He's the only one that's ever going to have buffs on him when we're talking about dungeons. And then converting that to poison, you got a chance to have a 2-turn poison effect, so she technically counts as a dot hero with a skill 1, skill 2 dot. Skill 3, it's just to add more damage. It'll help you do the wave clears faster. And I know I talk about the wave clears a lot when most people are concerned about the boss. If you get through the waves, the boss isn't that hard, right? If you've got a good solid healer and a good solid dot, that's all you need to clear the boss usually. It's just the first 2 waves when we're talking about C10 and speedrunning. If you don't have some way to control those waves or keep your team up, they're going to wipe you before you can get to the boss. Dow Lord, very hard unit to get. He's in light nat 5, but he's definitely worth building. He is good everywhere in the game. If you pull this guy, just build him up and use him. That 50% hit leader skill, amazing. He's also doesn't have a lot of dot skills, but the budget of a Dow Lord would be having a Hydra, the nat 3. They both extend the skills or the negative status effects that the other units use. So if there's burns and poisons on the boss, they get their turn, they'll extend those all by 1. But this guy does the job of 3 or 4 different monsters just with his 3 skills. So Divination, his skill 1, summon a magical array under an enemy to attack and deal 380% of attack and damage, 75% chance to reduce target's energy by 25% and slow them for 2 turns. When attacking, haste a random ally for 2 turns. So he's going to slow the boss, haste a random person on the team, basically just, giving you guys more turns to run. Inferno Rune on a skill 2, and this was hard to choose. His other skill 2 is a great ability, so either one you choose to go with, just base it off of your team build, but this is the one I would personally run. Attack an enemy 2 times with a True Fire Rune. Each attack deals 270% of attack and damage and has a 60% chance to reduce target's attack and defense for 2 turns. So there's an attack break and a defense break from one skill, from one unit. So not only are you able to slow the boss with this guy, you're going to break their attack and their defense with him. After attacking, increase duration of all the target's negative status effects by 1 turn. So that skill 2 is just insane, right? It's going to help keep your team alive, and it's going to help clear the boss faster by increasing the amount of times the negative status effects can go off. Skill 3, Protective Breath. Wield a Horsetail Whisk and grant all allies a protective shield, which increases their attack and defense for 2 turns and grants counter for 2 turns. So the only other unit I know that does this off the top of my head would be the Druid, right? He can give everybody a 1-turn counterattack, but usually you'll speed through that 1 turn pretty quick. But with this, you're pretty much guaranteed to leave a bunch of your team with that counterattack. Not that PoPo needs it, but the other units can definitely benefit from it. And you're increasing their attack and defense, so this is going to help clear waves faster, get you to the boss faster, and then help clear the boss faster. And it goes down to a 4-turn cooldown, so you can definitely use it by the time you get to the boss if you were to use it on the first wave. Flame Spirit, a lot of people only use her in Arena. They don't really talk about using her for dungeons and PvP, but she's another dot hero. You can build her skills the way I've got listed out on the screen. Blue Flame, throws a fireball, 40% chance to affect target with HP regen lock, so you're not getting a burn or anything off the first skill, but that regen lock could be good for the magic dungeon, where the boss is healing himself. And then you've got Chain Fireball in skill 2. Throw fireballs to attack an enemy 2 times. Each attack deals 250% of attack and damage, and has a 40% chance to silence the target for 1 turn, and burn them for 2 turns. So you're getting your burn on skill 2. So again, somebody could pair up with Yaksha and Abyss Lord. Skill 3, summon fireballs from the sky to attack all enemies 2 times. Each attack deals 135% of attack and damage, and has a 75% chance to burn targets for 2 turns. After attacking, gain haste for 2 turns. So again, just more turns from the haste, and another burn effect. Wisp, somebody that a lot of people haven't built yet, but she's definitely worth looking into. She's got a skill 1 bleed for 2 turns. Her skill 2 is to help keep her team up and moving. It's a AoE to all allies, HP, boost, and haste. So you're going to heal them for 15% and then haste them for 2 turns. The skill 3 degrade, that's basically a AoE dispel, all buffs from the enemies, and it slows them. So another dispel and slow. Yaksha, this is probably one of the best units if you roll her. Depending on the other units you've got, definitely build her. She has a great hero skill with her 41% leader skill. She is a HP based monster, so building her speed HP is great. That's what she wants. Or you can just go all HP if you can get enough speed substats. Skill 1, Flame Spear. Attack an enemy to deal 185% of attack and 12% of own max HP and damage. 85% chance to burn enemies for 2 turns. So S1 burn plus HP for damage. Skill 2, Trident. Attack an enemy 3 times. Each attack deals 70% of attack and 5% of own max HP and damage. Each attack has an 85% chance to burn the target for 1 turn. Detonate burn effects on the target after attacking. So basically, that's why you want to build her slower than your other units. You want her to go last. If you're running her with an Abyss Lord, this is some of that synergy I was talking about, or Flame Spirit or another burn style unit. That way, when she goes last, she can detonate all the effects. And if you're running her on Berserk runes, you can see how this gets a little OP, because the other 2 units could land 3 or 4 effects apiece. She comes in, maybe she doesn't have her skill 2 up yet. She throws out her Flame Spear, puts another couple of burns on there, and then blows it all up. So you're definitely talking about some very quick runs, and with her being so tanky and dealing max HP damage, she is burning down the waves pretty quickly as well. Skill 3 is just guaranteeing that detonation effect. So, and you're also still burning the targets. So it's a burn, detonation all in one. And it allows that detonation effect to happen for the next 2 turns. So even if you don't have her fully skilled, she's still able to basically set off those burns every turn, or pretty close to every turn. Hattori. Personally, this is who I run on my team. I run Hattori and PoPo. If I had a Medusa, I would sub my PoPo out for Medusa, or maybe run all 3, just because he synergizes with poison well. So, Lacerate skill 1, 60% chance to poison a target for 2 turns. Shadow Shuriken skill 2, 30% chance to poison a target for 2 turns, and has a drain effect. And then his skill 3, Lunar Guillotine, attack an enemy 6 times. Each attack deals 100% of attack and damage. First attack has an 80% chance to disable target's passive skills for 2 turns. Attacks 2 to 6, and will poison the target if they are critical. So you definitely want to have some crit rate on him. And right now I've got mine built up as attack, crit rate, attack. I'd like that to be attack, crit damage, attack eventually, but I just don't have the substats to support it yet. And he is a little squishy being a net 4, and he's an attack-based monster, so he doesn't have a lot of defense and HP base stats. So I've got to try to find a way to keep him alive more often. I have some runs that kind of fell out or just take forever because he dies early on. Hydra, like I said, this is like a budget Dow Lord. He does poison on skill 1, poison on skill 2. His skill 2 is a 75% chance to taunt all targets, and he deals damage based off of HP. So he's a tanky unit that can help you get through the wave 1, wave 2 while putting poison everywhere. And they can also increase the duration of negative status effects if you want to use them in that aspect. But I would just use them to poison everything and help you make it through that secondary wave. The Mummy, another Nat 3 monster. Technically, you could run the Hydra, the Mummy, and the Harpy with the Windwalker and whatever else you want. And they can probably clear the boss pretty early on if you just put them on Nat 5. If you just put them on 5-star runes from scenario. So I would run my I would run my Mummy with Torment, Maggot, and Bandage Dance. and it's all just about putting as many poisons on the target as possible. And he's also a tanky unit, right? He's defensive based, so he should be able to survive pretty well. He's going to start off with higher stats than, or higher defense and HP stats than most Nat3s. Harpy, she is good in a lot of different areas, not just dungeons. So mostly just PvE content, but she's good in all PvE content. Rip on her skill 1, that's a 1-turn bleed effect. Siren's Guard on skill 2, 15% HP to all allies, and increase their resist crit rate for 2 turns. Her other S2 is pretty good, so it's kind of a mix of what you want to run her as. Her S3 Siren's Power, summon the Siren's Power to regenerate 30% HP and 30% energy, so more turns and more ability to live through the bosses. Ripper, he's a Darknet 3. I'd run him Handsaw, Bloody Blade, and Disembowel, but he's definitely not needed. Just put him in there for kind of an extra unit if you wanted to build him up if you ran him. You know, LNDs aren't really weak to any other unit that you're gonna, or any other element that you're gonna find. So something to think about. So let's get to the leader skill choices. For nearly all uses of dot heroes, you want to use one of the following leaders. If we're talking Nat 5s, and I understand that these are not easily attainable, but a lot of people have them. You've got Doubt Lord, 50% hit. Obviously, that's going to be the best. Medusa with 41%. Yaksha, also 41% hit leader skill for all content, not just PvE, not just PvP. If your team is struggling to survive or the above heroes are not available to you right now, you can do PoPo for 33% defense. Necromancer, which is a hero you have to craft for 33% hit points. Personally, I run PoPo Necromancer on my team. I run the Necromancer HP leader skill just because I don't have the substats yet on my runes to support the survivability that I would need. And then any 3-star leader skill you see that helps your team survive, because 3 stars, they usually give you about 21% HP, defense, or speed. Or not speed, but HP and defense. But they're often based off of their element type. So you're kind of limited. If you choose one, you're going to have to build around that specific unit a lot of times. If we go with rune selections, all DOT heroes need to have as much hit percent as you can get on them to make sure the negative status effects land. There's no point running a damage over time hero if you can't land the effect. Early game, using 3-star units, you need to have high HP and high defense to survive. That's a higher priority before the hit, but as your substats improve, you can definitely change that. I definitely recommend Agile and Blessing runes to begin with. They're easy to farm in scenario, and they're going to give you the ability to live through the boss waves. Berserk runes are great mid to late game. As you get better substats on them, they help rotate in more turns, giving your heroes more attempts to land their DOTs. And then Desperation runes. They're great for your dot heroes that have AoE skills. I wouldn't use them on your dot heroes that have single skills, right? Desperation runes are pretty hard to get, especially if you're looking for very specific stats and main stats. So, like I said, Medusa is a great example of somebody that can benefit from Desperation runes. It'll help you bypass the immunity and cleanse towers because you can just lock them up where they don't ever take a turn, and you can just go straight at the boss, and that's going to shave off about a minute to 2 minutes depending on how well built your units are. And that's it. So if you guys liked and enjoyed this content, just let me know. If I can do anything to improve it, also leave that in the comments below. And I hope you guys have a great weekend.